People don't think of their backyard as the environment. This has been true for me, and it has colored the lessons I taught my students until this year. My name is Beth Gottlieb, and I am a fourth grade teacher in Elgin, Illinois. Every year, my fourth grade science lessons have brought my students' attention to the plight of our global environment as we learn about the effect of oil spills on seabirds and mammals, microplastics in the ocean, deforestation in South America, and even students working to ban plastic bags in Bali. It wasn't until I started my National Geographic certification, however, that I realized how important it is that I introduce students to their local environment as well. Knowing how to protect the environment begins at home, and we cannot properly protect or be passionate about that which we have not seen. Knowing what exists in our own backyards and the role those living things play in the larger plant and animal community is essential to conservation. For my Capstone project, I decided to focus on theme number 2, get outside. During this time of at-home learning due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I wanted my students to get away from their computer screens and out of their seats and give them a chance to observe the ecosystems in their own backyards. I started the conversation about the backyard environment by reading a book about bees and sharing with my students the importance of that misunderstood backyard resident. Through an online lesson, we then reviewed the different classes of creatures: fish, mammals, amphibians, reptiles, insects, birds, plants, fungi, and how to use dichotomous keys to identify them. Finally, I used the National Geographic lesson, Introducing Biodiversity and BioBlitz, to teach my students what a BioBlitz is and how to conduct one in their own backyard. At first, my students thought of the environment with a global mindset because that's what I shared with them. Through this BioBlitz activity, however, they were able to shift to a more local mindset and see that their backyard is, in fact, an environment all its own, and to see that they can take action and protect the ecosystem within their local environment. My goal was for my students to explore the natural world with a mind to learning about how they impact that world and how they are impacted by it, and that is exactly what happened. I knew my students understood that they could make a difference in their backyard environment when Daniel shared that he and his family had already taken steps to make their backyard friendlier for birds, and when I saw Ava's blueprints for the squirrel picnic table she and her dad planned to build. My students' perspective for conservation of wild places and wildlife had shifted from global to local, and they had gained a sense of equity for their backyard environment. The BioBlitz lesson connects well with the attitude of curiosity because my students had the opportunity to go outside and explore their backyard environment. They really enjoyed the process, even though it was tough to do alone and at home instead of with their class at school. It also connects to the skill of observation because my students were able to practice passive and active observation as they sat quietly watching for wildlife or turned over stones and logs searching for new wild places to explore. With all the outdoor world at their fingertips, my students were also able to pick and choose where to focus their attention and what data to gather. This activity also connects to the knowledge area of wildlife and wild places because my students were able to observe their backyard environment and use their knowledge of how different species of wildlife interact to see that their backyard is, in fact, an environment with unique ecosystems and that it is worthy of protection and care. Chloe demonstrated this when she wrote that, "I observed garden pansy plants near my fairy garden in my backyard. This gave me the idea of creating a butterfly garden to improve my backyard environment. Butterflies are important because they help to pollinate plants and help them reproduce. I plan to plant more garden pansies and other plants in my backyard to help my environment and to begin my butterfly garden." I could tell that this project created a lasting change in my students because many of them expressed an excitement over discovering new creatures in their backyards, and many of them shared plans to complete projects that would make their backyards a friendlier place for wildlife to thrive. Callie said she's going to make a bird feeder, which would make it easier for the birds to find food. She also said her family wanted to attract birds and watch them. My project even had an impact on my students' families and parents. One family created a bird feeder together. Another parent shared that the BioBlitz had become a family activity. Tyler's mom said it was fun for all of us because we all went out and pointed out ideas to write down. Tyler got to pick and choose what he wanted to use, but it was a family scavenger hunt. A second parent shared with me that her daughter loves to watch the birds in her yard and enjoyed learning more about the species of birds that live in her backyard environment. The biggest change that came from the project, however, was probably in me. I have always taught my students about the importance of caring for the natural world, but before engaging in this project, I had never thought about teaching my students about the importance of their own backyard environment. This is a project I will do again, whether it is at school or through home distance learning. I want my students to be passionate about caring for the natural world, and that passion can and should start right where they live. Our backyard is the environment, and it is ours to protect.